Thank you for so much for having me on this occasion. I don't know what time of day it is in your place, but it's evening and it's raining in our place right now. And yes, uh, what I aim to present to you at this time is to impress on you on how the the relationship between theology and power and how art has been very much instrumental in fortifying positions of power through theology. Uh, Maybe start with the first image, please. Okay, there you go. So to many of us, this should be very familiar. These are paintings in the catacombs. So this was before Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. And yeah, so if you notice, Jesus doesn't look familiar in this picture. He looks like some high Roman official, like a senator, because of his dress, costume. And if you notice as well, it's very flat in the sense that he is on the same level as that of his disciples. So this is an indication that on how Jesus was seen at this time. So there wasn't much the idea of Jesus as God at this time. So let's have another image, please. There you go. So this is a stark contrast to the first image that you saw. So this is a painting of, or a mosaic painting of Christ, the Pantocrator, or the ruler of the of everything, ruler of the universe. And if you notice, this is, I think this is from Palermo in Italy. But this is done along the Byzantine style. And if you notice, in this case, Jesus is very big and his way up in the ceiling of the church building. And around him are images of his disciples, but they are much smaller now. So this is, so if you notice, there has been a major transition from Jesus as the brother or as the friend to Jesus as God in this case. So ruler of the universe, ruler of the world. So there's the emphasis on rule, and the image of Jesus has become more familiar now. The one that is most widely circulated, the bearded white man with straight hair, very much unlike what you would expect from a Palestinian Jew. Let's go to the next image. Next image, please. Okay, so 500 years or so later, this happens. This is the Renaissance. This is a painting by a famous artist, Michelangelo, and you find this in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. And this is a major transition from the general attitude during the Middle Ages, where the rule of God is very absolute, in terms of how it is translated in the authority of the church. This time, very interesting that you should find this painting inside the Sistine Chapel, where the very place where they vote for the popes. And what is most interesting about this is you see the image of man and God connecting through the fingers. And if you notice, God is almost on the same level as Adam, or the man in this image. And so the Renaissance, this is the 16th century from which this painting was created, signifies a major shift in terms of the way people see the world. And a lot of phenomena are now explained by science, and much of the old claims by the church has been discredited or challenged. So as you can see, the image of God reaching out to Adam is encased inside a drapery that looks very much like the cranium of the brain. So it's almost like saying that perhaps God is the creation of the human mind. Next image, please. Can we go back to the image before that? Two images. Another, the one before that, this one. Yeah, okay. So this is again a very famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci. Oops, can we go back to the Last Supper painting? Hello. There you go. Thank you. So this is the famous Last Supper painting by Leonardo da Vinci. And if you notice, pretty much the same with the painting that was seen or discovered at the catacombs, Jesus is also in a very horizontal relationship with his disciples. So, and even his size is, it's a very naturalistic painting. So Jesus is not depicted to be way more than or bigger than the rest of the disciples. So again, this signifies that shift in the attitude, the worldview, and even the gradual diminished status of the church in the 16th century. Next image, please. The next one. Yeah. So what you see here are images that partly came out as a result of the Reformation. Oops. Can we go back to the crucifix image? Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah, let's stay with this one. This is yeah, okay. So these images came out as a result of the Reformation. So these are counter-Reformation paintings. The one on the left is by Peter Paul Rubens, and the other one on the right is by El Greco. Both are paintings done after the Renaissance, and both depict images of the crucified. Well, one is the crucified Christ, the other is the resurrected Christ. But both this time emphasize on the theology of redemption, the idea of Christ dying for our sins, which was not a very popular theology or a worldview prior to the Reformation. Next image, please. Next image. Okay. So here you will see the merging of architecture, sculpture, and painting all in one. And this is an example of a Baroque painting. Oops, can we go back to that? Hello? Can we, yeah, okay, there we go. So this is an example of a Baroque painting, but the Baroque period was a time where Counter-Reformation was very vigorous on the part of the Roman Catholic Church. So you might call this an aggressive advertising campaign. So the whole idea is to represent what it feels like, a foretaste of what it feels like to be in heaven. So it was a major device or ploy by the church to bring back the faithful to the church. Next image. Next image. Excuse me. Okay. So this is. Oops. Can we go back to that one, please? There. This is a painting, an English painting by John Constable, and this is the period of Romanticism, where this time you see a very much reduced image of the church, where the church used to be very dominant in the lives of the people in Europe back then. This time you see its nature, it's the trees that's dominating the church. So which it may not be really the case. It's just an illusion, basically, because you're looking at the church with the trees in the foreground that makes it seem much bigger than the church in this case. But this is already an indication how the authority of the church is pretty much on the decline. Okay, next image. And here you will see images of a major point of transition in the West, where the shift from monarchy, which is very much supported by the church, to a republic. So on the left, you see a painting by Eugene Delacroix, Liberty Leading the People. And then on the right is an image of Napoleon Bonaparte crowning himself as emperor. And this is very significant because Napoleon Bonaparte is not a royal person, so he has no royal lineage. He comes from a very obscure, common background, and eventually finding himself to be an emperor. So this is a major shift away from the church sponsored or supported social order through the kings or through monarchy towards a republic. And again, if you notice, the whole idea, especially on the painting of Napoleon Bonaparte, he may be a commoner, but he has enthroned himself and he has actually practically deified himself. So he is presenting himself as a demigod in this image. Next picture, please.
Manny, sorry, Manny,
Yes.
you've used your time, Manny. So if you wouldn't mind offering a summary statement, and then we'll move over to Chad.
Yes, I will. Okay, so based on this, if you notice, the whole idea here is how the arts have been extensively used in terms of fortifying cultural ideologies to support people in power. So Yeah, and
Manny, thank you.
what I'm saying, basically, what I'm saying is the history of the arts is actually an evolution of theology.
Thank you, Gerald, and it's great to be with you today, as I've been with eDARE all the way along, but to be joining Manny today, and I want to thank him for his contribution and to invite us to think about the role that the arts can and should play in unmasking the sorts of myths about power and liberating us from the cultural narratives about power that those logics impose on our way of life and our collective imaginations. And so in my brief contribution today, I want to rhyme with Manny from the perspective of constructive theology, which can be understood as a resistance to or a restoring of what has been known historically as systematic theology. But of course, it bears the sorts of accretions of various colonial narratives that we have inherited. And so part of our wrestling with that is to first deconstruct those narratives. So constructive theology focuses on the fact that there's no theology without a context, and we're always constructing our cosmologies and our images that even Manny showed us in some of the art here today. For Christian theology, those cultural stories are always relational, and beginning with a relationship of love that is the Trinity. And that aspect of relationality relates to Manny's contributions in two ways that I want to share here today. And the first is in the way of theopoetics. And I happen to know, getting to know Manny, that the fruit of a lot of his art and the community of art that grows around him are rooted in the relationships of an intentional community of artists. And Manny, as we've spoken before, that's the Linangan art residency where you are.
Yep.
And artists come together to live and bring their context into transcontextual hermeneutics and synergy. And that synergy is significant for makers of art, and the quality of our moral imagination is related to that communion of relationships that form our vision and therefore what we transmit through art. And I think, like the proverbial tree that's known by its fruit, a countercultural community that embodies an alternative and therefore alternative visions for life will nurture the fruit of art that communicate that alternative vision. And we've seen how some of that changed through the centuries that Manny shared here today. And that is the realm of theopoetics, I want to say. That word that flows from the communion of makers such as Manny and the Linangan art residency create these counter narratives about what is and what is possible. And the second that I want to point to is about theological aesthetics. So the Trinity, that is a relationship of love, is creative, and relational creativity is an image of God that we all bear. And I think that's a connection between theology and aesthetics, between what God is and God's creative self-expression or revelation. So right relationships will be creative and artistic expression that emerges from communities of deep theological reflection is an example of that. And so in Christian worship, a lot of times we see dance and poetics and the visual or the plastic arts joining music as an aesthetic expression of that mystery of God and those power relationships that we're trying to aim towards, that language so often fails us. So aesthetics can take on this prophetic role in this moral imagination. We see this in the field of environmental aesthetics today, where technocratic approaches to climate finance and green technology might fail to motivate people to behavioral change or political change, and the arts can speak profoundly to those anxieties and our aspirations, and help us to create those countercultural ideas to take on form. And I want to close just by sharing actually one of the image of Manny's works that has demonstrated this to me in his painting Maganda. And here he's interpreting a Philippine creation myth of Maganda being born of a tree trunk. And in the myth, Maganda is first discovered by a bird that's pictured there on the left, if you can see it. But in Manny's interpretation here, he shows the arrival of a Spanish galleon, you see in the background, that will soon discover her in the colonial sense of the doctrine of discovery, which of course will commodify this intrinsic goodness of life and strip her of her ecological and relational context that gives meaning and is actually an ecological power, which I think reflects the Trinitarian nature of God. So there's a clear example I wanted to share as a closing example of the power of theological aesthetics to critique the narratives that we receive and then create those narratives that we see possible. So art helps us retrace those steps to bear new fruit, and that liberation that's available to us through the arts nurture our creative expression as icons of the life-giving creative relationship of power that Jesus actually revealed to us and calls us to. So I hope that motivates us. Thank you, Manny, for calling us to exercise that countercultural creativity that is the image of God that we all bear. Thanks, friends.